Hey, what's up, everybody? It's November 24th, 2011, and 2011, that's the first joke. 11, and I'm having a Tonya, it's Thanksgiving, and I'm having a Marlboro Lights, among other things. That's up to interpretation. You can think music, or you can think anything you can think. So basically I'm here talking to myself, doing the show for another week here in Costa Rica, Central America. Basically I just came here to tell everyone that everyone is fucking gorgeous, everyone's fantastic, there's nothing to worry about, nothing worth fighting over, and life is perfect the way it is for everyone, including me. Life is perfect for everybody in this moment as it is, and that's all that it really is, and that's all that exists. And anything else than this moment is a story in your head or in my head, because this is all there is. And if I start remembering something, I'm creating a story in my head of something that is not happening now. So since that is not happening now, it's not real, it's in my head, and it's just like a movie that goes around in circles in my head, and I'm believing that that's what's going to happen. And then because I'm so powerful and a powerful creator, and my belief power is so strong in what I invest, that I believe my story in my head. And so what I do is that I project it into what is called the future, and then the future manifests the story that I had in my head, because it wasn't real at that point. Because in that moment when I was thinking that story, I was only smoking a cigarette, listening to music, and talking to this recorder, and not doing anything else other than this. But then I had a thought in my head, and the thought attracted other thoughts that were alike, because that's the law of attraction. It attracts what is alike. And so if I have a thought about a fear, then more thoughts about that fear will come. They will follow. Expect it. It's just the law. So what do? You change your pattern of thought. You stop thinking that kind of thoughts. You first realize what you're thinking, and then realize, first of all, it's not real, it's in my head. Second of all, if I keep thinking it, more thoughts will arrive that will match it. And third of all, this is going to be projected into what I perceive as future, and then it'll become my reality in the future. But right now it's not my reality, so why invest in making it real? Why to keep thinking those things? Then just stop, look at your thoughts, and look around you where you are, and realize that in this moment those thoughts are inside your head, and around you where you are it's a completely different story, and that's the only story that is real in this moment. And it doesn't mean it's going to be the only story, because you can, or the only reality, because depending on what you're thinking now, the story or the reality, might change, will change. So anyway, let's change this song. Let's see what this one is. I think this one's a little trance. Oh no, this one no. This is the one that I wanted. This one is Café del Mar, chill house music, and this has a Buddha Bar volume 6. So it's very relaxing. It's amazing with a cigarette and a glass of wine. Na 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 na. Yeah, yeah. Na 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 na. Oh, oh. Yeah. So one thing you have to remember, or you don't have to, but it would be helpful if you what you want is to live a life of peace, it would be helpful if you remember who you are, and the way of remembering doesn't make sense to the ego. The way of remembering doesn't make sense to the human being, because the human being is hooked on the way the ego works, and the ego does not understand this higher understanding. It's out of reach for the ego to understand. And so if I tell you this, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't, because you're accustomed to what makes sense according to the ego, and this is beyond the ego. So what you can do is be open. What you can do is be willing, or open and willing and open, or open to the possibility that maybe there's another way that I am not aware of, but maybe there's a possibility that this is not the only way. The way that I know how life works might be not the only way. Maybe there's another way that I'm not aware of. Maybe. So if I'm open to that possibility, I open the door for this higher understanding. And then this higher understanding tells me, you just have to remember who you are, because who you are hasn't stopped. Who you are exists eternally. And eternally means that it has always been, and it always will be, and it's already as it is, and it's already perfect, and it's already eternal. So there's nothing wrong with the way that you are. There's nothing wrong with who you are. Remember, you're perceiving everything with the filter of the ego, and the ego accepts only part of what's good or perfection, and then accepts also a fake idea of who the ego believes you are. But you are not what the ego tells you that you are. You believe what the ego tells you that you are, and that's why you perceive yourself as less than perfect, because you're perceiving yourself from a perception that is not going to allow you to perceive yourself free and perfect and whole as you are. So what do you do to remember what you are or who you are? You just start thinking or bringing thoughts. The first thought, slowly or fast, will attract other thoughts that are alike. It's the law of attraction. So we're changing our thinking, because that's where the creation begins, when we start thinking. It's not real yet in this reality. It's already real, because it's the only reality that it really is, that we are not perceiving. But in the reality that we see here today, in this moment, the ego is perceiving something else. But how do we become free from the ego? Well, okay, start focusing on who you are. And what are you? Perfection. You are perfect. There's nothing wrong with you. And you deal with it, because with the filter of the ego, you look in the mirror and you see every imperfection in your body. Of course, it's normal, because you're perceiving yourself with the ego, your ego. And your ego is going to see imperfection. It's not going to allow perfection. The ego comes and tells you, I'm going to save you. I'm your savior. I'm protecting you. You cannot wear what you're wearing. I'm protecting you. I don't want you to get hurt. I'm protecting you. There's nothing to be protected from. But you don't know it, or you forgot it. And so until you realize that you're perceiving with the ego, which is a fake perception, or a perception that doesn't serve you well, until you realize that and change that perception and allow a higher perception to be in place, then you won't see change. But the change comes when you start opening to a higher understanding of life, to a higher understanding. Step back, get out of your story, step back and look at it. Look at it and realize that you're not in it. That it's a story and it's not real, and it will fade and it will dissolve and disappear forever, because it's not real. It will just, you will see it and you realize it's not real. It's a story. It never existed, and it's just a story that was made by my beliefs, but by the way was believing life to be, by the way I was believing my thoughts to be, by the way I was accepting my thinking. And it's all fake. The only reality is that I am love, I am perfect, and whatever else that is perceived that goes against it, it's an attack, and only the ego can attack, because the ego feels guilt, and guilt is also a fantasy. It's not real, because in reality, in the eternal reality, you never did anything wrong. Never, ever. It's impossible. You're perfect, you're holy, you're perfect. And anything else that goes against this is just the ego perception of who you are, which is totally fake and messed up. I love you. The ego might take parts of what is real and mix it with what's not real. I love you. Love your ego, but don't believe it. Just give it love. Give it love. The more love you give your ego, the more it will disappear. You will face resistance, because resistance is normal. You're used to a state of being in which for so many years you have believed life to be this way. So allowing a new paradigm, it's going to raise your defenses, thinking, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm losing control, not knowing what this paradigm is. It's okay, it can scare you, it can make you feel nervous, it can make you feel like, but allow all of those feelings. Don't reject anything, allow everything to happen. It's a process, and just allow it, and go with it, and go with it. And when those thoughts that are negative, that scare you, come, just remember, they're only thoughts. They're in your head in that moment. They're not happening. And in that moment, you can decide to give your focus to a better thought, to another thought. Because where you focus is, where your attention is, that's what you're working on creating. So let it go. Don't focus on it. And don't be afraid. Let it go without fear. You're not a slave of those thoughts. You control your life. Don't let your thoughts control your life, because it's you who control your life. Thoughts come and go, and thoughts are only thoughts. Okay? Let's change this song.